Welcome to Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 327, MSP Sales Revolution. This is our live show where we discuss the ins and outs of running your computer repair business. Our show today is brought to you by BusyBench, the all-in-one management tool simplifying IT for computer repair businesses with a clean and simple interface. Spend more time running your business instead of learning your management software. For a free 14-day trial, just go to busybench.com. Use the offer code PODNUTS for 30% off the life of your account. And also by Untangle, next generation firewall, the best solution for bringing powerful network security to your clients in an easy to manage and cost-effective package. Untangle's partnership program helps repair shops add cybersecurity to their services and get up and running quickly. Get started today at untangle.com/podnuts. Let me introduce the co-host. We have Rick Smith from Renactus Technology. Rick, how you doing?
Doing great, Jeff. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you back, my friend. And also a newcomer, we have Jennifer Bleam from MSP Sales Revolution. Jennifer, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. Great to have you today and excited to learn some new things. So let's go ahead and start off with a tip or story that we could learn from. And Rick, since my normal co-host is not here, guess what? You're up.
Wow. I gotta fill John's shoes. Big shoes. I guess my tip or story comes from earlier this week. I ordered a client some refurb Dell Optiplex machines. In a rush, we're trying to get it up. I normally, for most clients, this is a big client. There's a lot of different machines that serves different purposes. So I make images for the different departments, basically. So this was for a sales department. Took the first machine out of the box, turned it on. It booted up, went through the whole normal Windows process, whatever, activated it. Then I turned it off, took the drive out, put the image on that I normally put on it, put it back in, let it run. It's up and running, connected to the server, it's up and running. The next three machines, not thinking, in a rush, because usually what we do is we take a SSD drive that's already prepared and just slide it in the machine. So I just took the drives out, put it on my copier. I can't think of the name of it now. But anyway, put it on my copier, took the library, put the image right on the drive, put it in, did it for the next three machines, turn them on. What happened? I never activated, so Windows 10 would not activate. So I'm like, well, I didn't activate from the original image. So I spoke to John. John and Paco gave me a couple of ideas earlier in the week. Tried both of them. One was to run the Windows update, the Windows Imager. What do you call that thing? What do you call it? I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for words right now. But when you go to update, you can go and download the Windows. Forget it. You know what I'm saying. It'll come to me. But anyway, I ran that, didn't work. Then tried to just force the update through, didn't work. What did happen, luckily, was the first machine that I did before I threw the image on, I put it actually on my bench machine, and I made an Acronis copy of it. So what I ended up doing was having to take that image, put it on the other three drives again, then rerun it, activate the system, then take it out, throw the image back on the original client, the image we used for the client, and that worked. So I guess my tip is pay attention to what you're doing, activate the machine first. I'm so used to, I guess, Windows 10 just activating when you just add a new drive to it. I just didn't think, and I drew a blank and just threw my image on and basically wasted about 2 hours of time.
So, Rick, let me ask you this. In a scenario like this, if we look at things that most of us are not good at, one would be, I don't know, maybe having a checklist.
Yeah, it's part of it. I just hadn't done it this way before. So I just, normally, again, we just normally throw in, we'll take a drive disk, or we'll have a drive already prepared and we'll throw it in. And Windows activates. It's just weird that I did find it weird that it did not activate once I threw the image on. I had to use the original image from the refurb company that was on there to get Windows 10 to activate. And then once it activated, the digital license stays attached. And then when I threw the image back over, when I re-imaged it, it was fine with activation. So you're right.
Which image were you using for Windows 10 to put on those computers?
It's one we create. We create it.
Based off of, was it just a regular license?
Yes, it's off of one of his machines. We create off another Optiplex, the same exact machine. So we create the image off of that machine. Now, as long as Windows 10 is activated on the machine when we use the new image, it's fine. It'll just update to it, and we don't have a problem with Windows.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because you said something about refurbished. In a refurbished Windows 10, it goes all the way back to Windows XP. It's different, and so
I just learned.
Yeah. So you have to watch your images, which one you're using for, when it activates, like a machine activates Windows 10 Pro, let's say it's a OEM license, you have to use the OEM software, or if it's a refurbished license, you have to use a refurbished software. And if it's a retail license, I don't know that a retail license, I'm sure it cares one way or another. I don't know how they keep all those numbers and everything like that, but that's definitely something to think about. And yeah, the problem is a lot of times we're running around with our hair on fire trying to get stuff done. And we've got the process right here in our noggins, and we go, man, let's just get this thing done.
Right.
Because we all do it, Rick. It's not like you're standing out there by yourself. I do it all the time. And I sit there and kick myself and go, how could I solve this problem? Mm-hmm. So it's all a learning experience, I guess, is what I'm saying, which is not a bad thing. Just don't do it next time.
I did add it to my checklist, though. Activate first. It's number one.
Oh, man. All right, Jennifer, it's up to you now. Go ahead and bring us home with a tip or story that we can learn from.
Yeah, for sure. So you were just talking about us running around with our hair on fire. And I think it's important to remember that our clients are doing the same thing. So I have heard over the last couple of weeks of a resurgence in something that we saw about 4 or 5 years ago, which was, and 4 or 5 years ago, the tool that was being used was Wi-Fi Fisher, which some of you may have heard about. But Wi-Fi Fisher essentially gets inside of your network, and I'll send this article over to you, Jeffrey, so we can post it on the show notes. But Wi-Fi Fisher essentially gets into one of your clients' networks and then disables the existing network, boots everybody else off, right? Does a reset so that everybody is kicked off, and then creates a secondary network that looks exactly the same and doesn't require a password. So your more savvy clients are going to keep trying to connect to the old one. They're going to try putting the password in. It's not going to let them know, hopefully, or it's not going to let them in. We all hope that they would then reach out to you as their IT service provider and say, hey, I got kicked out. And you're probably going to say, well, was this just you, or was this every machine on the network? What is kicked off the network? And it's everybody. Nobody can get into Wi-Fi, at which point you start troubleshooting. And you see this new network that appears to be identical, but it isn't secure. So now you're thinking, okay, what's going on? I'm broadcasting a non-secure network. I better start troubleshooting this. And what this tool does, and again, I can't confirm that it's this tool that's being used in the attacks I've heard about over the last couple of weeks, but it's going to be something similar, right? Because there's not a whole lot that's new under the sun. What this tool does, what Wi-Fi Fisher does, is pops up a box that says, hey, we're doing a mandatory reboot and reset. There's a security protocol we need to put in place. And in order for you to push this update, we require your password. And so whether it's you putting in the password or you giving the password to the client so they can put it in and they get back online, you all think you're doing the right thing by updating your router and updating everything that needs to be done. And in effect, what you've just done is giving your password to the bad guys. So I wanted to bring that up because it's really important that we all understand that these hackers and these threat actors, these bad guys, they're really starting to think like us. They're saying, okay, we're going to shut down Wi-Fi, and all of these IT companies are going to ask the question, well, who's been disconnected? So therefore, we're not just going to kick off one person, we're going to kick off everybody. Nobody can get online, because that's the first question we would ask. So they almost have our playbook. They probably do have our playbook in mind, whether that's a documented playbook or it's just what's in our heads, and they're working around us. So it's almost a social engineering that people really aren't talking about, right? The hackers are social engineering us as IT companies, and really doing some scary things like using lab tech or using Kaseya, using tools that we know, using them in legitimate ways. They're not raising red flags because it's not a threat. So it's not, I'm sharing the article not because it's, I can't find anything that's talking about it happening today. I've just heard about 3 or 4 instances, and that's when my hackles go up. Like, okay, if I've heard about it 3 or 4 times, it's happening. There's a resurgence. I can't promise it's the tool that we're going to link to, but read through it and just think, how would you stop it? Because, read through that article is pretty scary. So I wanted to share that with you because it gives us an idea of this, this brave new world that we all get to deal with now.
Yeah, that's a good story there, and it's good knowledge to keep in mind. I think a lot of times when we use the word hacker, there's people that they go back to movies like Sneakers and in Hacker, which was dumb. But anyways, they look at these movies like, oh, there's these people and they're sitting behind a keyboard in a basement somewhere and they're just typing away this code and they're breaking in. And really, if you look at the way most people are gotten today, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is via email, number one, through illegitimate links, and number two would be social engineering. It's having a conversation with somebody. It's pretty easy if they're using just your normal everyday passwords, like the name of their dog and maybe the year they were born, et cetera, et cetera. There's easy things to figure out about a person where you can break it down to where you only have a few things that you got to try in order to get these passwords. And then, it's just, we have to make people more aware. And unfortunately, the consumer side or our user base, they're basically they're not paying attention to a lot of that stuff. There's like, I'm in here 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, whatever it is. I just need to get my job done. I just want my computer to work. I don't have time for this. And I think it's very important for people to take a step back and go, I'm sorry, but in today's day and age, it's getting worse and worse. You're going to have to make time for this. This is the world we live in now.
Yeah, I would agree. And what's interesting is up until now, really the managed services and even break fix, all of the responsibility was on us as IT service professionals, right? Keep the machines up, keep them patched, make sure I can print. If I've got if I'm the client and I need to push out payroll and I can't, I'm going to call you. And if I can't, it's really your fault, right? So it was 100% the IT company's responsibility. And the message we need to start saying is that we need to share responsibility. Yes, we're going to do everything we can. We're going to put layers in place. We're going to educate the clients. And we need to make those layers the very best that we can. But then there needs to be some personal responsibility on the part of the client, the end user. And that's new because that wasn't there a year or two ago. It's a very new perspective and a new shift.
Well, Jennifer, you probably don't know me very well, and you probably haven't listened to the show too much, but pretty much my client base pretty much knows that the contract they sign with me is basically says I'm responsible for nothing. And I tell them that straight up. Here's all what it says. Here's all the legalese. Here's what and I'm going to do the best of my ability to do what I need to do. But here's the thing. And I probably, now that I'm thinking about this, I probably should put a stupid clause in there. If you are in fact stupid, then we are not going to take care of this problem. You're on your own.
Right. You call it stupid. I call them happy clickers, right? So we all have clients that are just like, I really thought I had a rich uncle in Europe or, Egypt or whatever. I thought he had $27 trillion for me. So I clicked on it. And, we all laugh at that, but it's easy for us to fall into the same trap, right? We get busy. We want to see how old we're going to look in 20 years. So we download the stupid app and don't think about it from a security standpoint because it was late and we were tired, or I got an email that really looked good, right? It was from someone who wanted me to come to a show, something similar to this. And had I not been on my toes and hovered over where did this really come from and what's this link I'm getting ready to click on, it looks good. Gone are the days where there's blatant typos and there's grammatical errors. These, you mentioned hackers. I thought of Iron Man, like nobody says hack anymore. This isn't the 80s, right? But these are companies. Like they split test their emails, they split test their subject lines. They know what's going to work to get you to open it and get you to click on it, because if you don't click the link, they don't make any money, and it's pure business. So it's not that, the greasy haired 16-year-old in his mom's basement. That's not who we're up against anymore.
It really comes down to, in my opinion, psychology 101. If you
100%
know,
agree.
all right. So let's see. My personal tip basically is I had an issue, and I still kind of have an issue with I had a customer who had a Gmail account who we hooked into her Outlook account, and not a big deal. Now, what we probably should have done is dual authentication, which I didn't do because, again, from a residential side, it's kind of a pain in the butt and not something I won't really want to be responsible for. And you kind of got to do that with a person that's there or on premise with their phone or whatever you're going to use for authenticating, so you can kind of walk them through the process. So it's kind of a pain. Anyways, Google has a thing they've changed over the years, and this year it started rearing its head. But there's a thing where you can click less secure apps in order to go into things like Outlook, which a lot of people were like, well, wait a minute. If Outlook is a less secure app, well, the way it holds the username and password, maybe it's not as secure as Google would like it to see. They're trying to do the right thing. And yes, I know a lot of people are going to say, why are they still using Outlook? I don't know. I use Outlook. I prefer it. It does the things the way I want it to do it. So there's that. My customers are the same way. They use Office 365. They use Outlook. It's not a big deal. But anyways, so I went through this whole process, and they were now on an older version of Office 2013. Not a big deal, because I actually had to go because I didn't know the answer to this question. Again, we don't know the answer to all these questions. Thank God there's things like Google out there. But I had to look at the support date, the ending support date for Office 2013. And it's, I can't remember the month, but it's 2023. Not a big deal. That's for Office 2013 Service Pack 1. So make sure so one of the things I had to do is I went in and I made sure that Office was updated so that they would get to the latest, greatest update for 2013 and they would be fine. But sometimes you have to read between the lines on that stuff when you're looking for information. They could have Office 2013 Professional or whatever version it was right off the disk that's never been updated, and that is not supported. All that support ended way back in like 2014. So you got to make sure that when you're looking at these other ones, you got to make sure that you're updated to the latest version so that it is supported to whatever that support end date is. All right. With that, let's go into a quick little ad. We're going to talk about TechCon Unplugged, bringing the IT community together. Join like-minded business owners for a weekend packed with resources to help your IT business thrive. Hear from experts and get one-on-one time with peers facing the same challenges. Walk away with concrete action items to take your business to the next level. September 20th through the 22nd, 2019. It's coming up quick in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to techconunplugged.com right now and get your tickets. It's all-inclusive. It's going to take care of all your meals. Friday night, Saturday breakfast, Saturday lunch, Saturday night at Dave & Buster's. We're going to have a great time. Sunday breakfast and Sunday lunch. Ticket price is $199. Hotels are $102 a night. This is a super inexpensive retreat. You can get away from your business and learn something with your peers out in the industry. Again, go to techconunplugged.com. Get your tickets today before they're all gone. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about our main topic. Obviously, we have Jennifer here, and she is running a MSP sales revolution. I like the name. We're having a revolution for sales. But you sell basically you talk about cybersecurity. That's it sounds like that's your niche from the things I read on your website. So let's go ahead and first, let's talk a little bit about what does cybersecurity mean? Because there's a bunch of different definitions out there. And I'm going to say that probably 99% of the people might not be exactly right on base.
Yeah, so the high level would be protect, defend. Obviously, there's the cleanup afterwards. So you can pull from the NIST framework. You can think however you want to think about it. But it's layers of an onion, right? You hear all the time you've got to put security layers in place, and so some of the things that we've done, and I say we because I used to own an MSP, so I still think of myself as an MSP, but some of the things that IT companies have done traditionally, like firewalls, as long as they're solid business grade firewalls and not, blue box from Best Buy. But some of the things we have, traditionally done, we did from a security standpoint. And 10 years ago, that was enough, right? As long as you were patching and had a good firewall in place, maybe a couple of other things, DNS eventually, that was enough. And the goal was to keep the bad stuff, which 10 years ago, really the only bad thing was viruses. It's really about the only thing we had to worry about. Let's keep the bad stuff out. That's what cybersecurity is all about, is let's keep the bad stuff out. And it's always reactionary. We are never going to keep everything out. So keeping as much out as is reasonable, and then a plan to recover when those layers of security are not sufficient. It's a high level, but it's a good working definition.
Okay.
And I did hear one, I think it was last week or the week before, one of your co-hosts gave a very long, it was a great definition. It was a little long and lengthy that probably wouldn't fit on a pretty little business card. But it's accurate, right? Keep the bad guys out. If they get in, we want to know about it, and then we need to be able to recover. And each of those things has so many different layers to it.
Absolutely. All right, Rick, I want to ask you, so when you think about things like cybersecurity in your business, what types of things are you thinking about?
Well, first and foremost is the exterior, so it's firewall. I'm just thinking in terms of how I approach it. So I tell the customer, we're looking at firewall. It's more than just, because everyone thinks if I have an antivirus, I'm fine, which is, in no way, shape, or form enough. So I think in terms of firewall, some kind of backup that is versioned. Then of course antivirus. Things like I'm starting to do a little bit more now, and I've tested a few breach programs. Basically, I forget the name of it now, but I just finished
like pen testing or
yeah.
Okay.
I forget the name of the company we've tried, just to do just a little bit more. So for me, it's a layered approach. It's, I tell customers all the time, I can never guarantee that things won't go wrong. A lot of stuff happens, it's human error. I could tell you 22 times, don't click this button. If you click it and something goes wrong, it's going to go wrong. So more so it's versioning. It's backup. It's antivirus. It's firewall security. It's I guess that's just about it, really. And
Okay.
that's how I approach it right now. And then I think one of the biggest things I'm going to have to start doing and figure out a way to model this is customer education. Because one of the things that happens, I read a statistic somewhere, I guess it's somewhere 60 to 75% of all problems that happen internally in a network or somehow user error. So, and again, that's clicking on something you shouldn't click on, or going somewhere you shouldn't be. So I'm going to figure out a way to incorporate that into my model. If there's a charge for it, or some kind of class, or some kind of paperwork we put out for it, something so that, we can give more of an education to the end user on how to protect themselves.
There's a real quick way to solve that. When you go and see your clients, just carry a very big bat with you, and that might work. All right. So,
and the other thing is that I was thinking about this earlier. One of the biggest issues that clients hate that they have to change their passwords, right? They absolutely, and I get clients all the time. Can you make it so we don't have to change our password? Yeah, I can, but I'm not going to. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to. You should change your password, and you should not use password 1 and then change it to password 2. And I get so many of those. Like, I'll reset a password. A client will call, say, I can't remember the password. I'll reset a password for them. We'll log in, reset it. Now, I use the default as password 1, but click that you have to change the password when you log in. And I've found plenty of times they'll just change it to password 2. So I'm going to come up with something a little more sophisticated for them to change it to.
Oh, so when I think about things like cybersecurity, and I look at it from a business standpoint of we needed to do things to protect our customers. We should have been doing this 20 years ago. The stuff that honestly customers have gotten away with for so many years of going to a Best Buy and buying something off the shelf and putting in their own routers and their own Wi-Fi access points and all this kind of stuff. It should have been stopped. And nobody back in the day was big enough to say, no, we're not going to support. You know what? We're not going to support you, because everybody's just out there trying to make a buck, trying to do what they need to do. But if you're really thinking about your customer from that standpoint of your job is to protect them. And there's all kinds of things out there. I think the statistics still today is if Windows was 100% patch, or Windows in your third party piece of software like Adobe Reader and all that kind of stuff, if those things were patched, you would probably mitigate 75% of the intrusions that were able to come into a system. Because what the bad guys are looking for is they're looking for loopholes in open software, in broken software. And guess what? There's always going to be a loophole in every piece of software that's ever made. That's just the way they writing code. That's the way it is. I don't get how those guys do it, but the way they do it, you're not going to be 100% on that stuff. So we have to figure out what's going to be the best way to mitigate the problems. And Rick, one of the points you brought up was backups. You got to have something to go back to. And a lot of times there's been people for years ago, oh, you only need a cloud backup, or you only need a local backup. And I'm going, no, that's not the approach we ever should have been using. We should have been using an approach where you had a local backup that you could go back to real quick. And then you had a cloud backup with some sort of versioning, or even versioning on the local backup. But the chances of your system, the local backup, and the cloud backup all being compromised at the same time, not very likely.
Well, and even a lot of security experts now are recommending a third option, or a third backup, which is an air-gapped backup. So you physically take it out and take it elsewhere, so that, okay, if the cloud service provider happens to get hit, we'll just say WannaCry, because I want to tie back into something you said, and you get hit with WannaCry as well, you've just lost your two backups. But guess what? You've got that air-gapped backup that you can pull from. So it's a mindset shift. We have to start looking at security differently. And you mentioned patching, and if we could just patch our operating systems and main line of business. When WannaCry hit, I don't know if you guys remember this a couple years ago, but it was like the maps looked like something out of a like Stephen King novel. Like, it was just spreading across the globe. And that spread because of unapplied patches that had been available for 4 months, 6 months, something crazy, and the patches simply hadn't been applied. So while that isn't enough, let's at least do the bare minimum. Let's do the things that we should be doing.
And that's the point. There's a lot of things that we probably should have forced our customers to do from the beginning, and now we're getting to the point where we almost have to force them. But okay, let me ask you a question, because obviously you've been in this business for a while, and I've asked this question to other hosts that have come on the show. When does a person usually initiate a backup?
You're not asking me how often should a backup be run, are you? You're asking
No,
it's after they get hit.
Right, it's after an emergency, after a fire,
Exactly.
after an employee deletes a million files. It's after they feel the pain. Yep.
And it's such a sad thing, but the reality is that happens all the time. And then there are people who still, they go, no, we're not going to.
It won't happen twice.
You'll never get struck by lightning twice.
And there's still MSPs that don't follow what we were just saying, right? I actually talked to one last week, and he was telling me about a client who has a Comcast router. I said, and a firewall? Like, can you do that? Because I'm not a tech. I mean, I'm techie. I'm like, can you do a He's like, nah, we don't. We just have the Comcast router. And I'm like, and there's no fire. Like, I'm like thinking I'm never going to sleep tonight. He's like, no, we just let that happen. And I'm like, yeah, you can't do that. And he's like, we've done it for years. And I'm like, congratulations, you need to fix that because
Right,
you've been
you just
playing
been
with
lucky.
fire. You've been lucky. So, and I said, who? And he's like, well, the client's cheap, which that's a mindset issue. I can't fix that today. But I said, okay, let's assume the client's cheap. One thing I can guarantee you about your client is when they get hit, not if they're hit, but when they're hit, their first phone call is going to be either to you or their attorney to sue you.
Yeah.
So you got to get rid of that Comcast router only and put something else in place.
Yeah, from the Comcast side, so you can, in order to have a static IP, you have to run a Comcast business class router, but then you put a firewall on the other side of that, put the Comcast router into bridge mode, which can be done, and people do it all the time. But yeah, using the Comcast router as a firewall is stupid.
I
I'll say
100%
what it is.
agree. 100% agree.
And most
one of
people
the-
should know that. What were you going to say, Rick?
We all should. Now, I'm saying one of the things, as talking about what MSP should be doing, one of the things we have to make sure we do, not only do we put these things in place, but we have to test them, make sure they work. It makes no sense to have a backup running and you never test it to see if it's actually backing up, doing what it's saying, what it's supposed to be doing. Because, I've run into situations with clients, and this hasn't happened to me, and I've learned from them. But they swore that I got a client that got our ransomware. They swore they had a backup. And this happened in 2018. When we look, their last backup was in 2014. And no one ever checked. So I got got this client because of this happened, and they happened to get a recommendation from someone else, and they called me. But as MSPs, we need to make sure we check all these things we put in place for our clients. So when you have to fight with the cheap client to get XYZ to work or get them to spend money on XYZ or ABC, we need to make sure that at least we're doing our part in that. So, you test backups, you make sure that you don't rely just on your RMM software to patch Windows or to patch everything. Make sure, double check that it's actually happening, and don't just take it for granted that it's running when it's supposed to.
Well, and that's one of the things we talked about before we got on this call, Rick, was that I've had some of the major Windows 10 updates. They don't always go through on their own, even using an RMM software. Now, what I explained to the client is that, usually they'll have like little weird things that happen, like Edge will open up but won't close, or maybe their Office, Microsoft Office might not open. Things like that. And then you kind of go, oh yeah, there's a major update. It's time we get this thing down. Well, it takes time, right? So the RMM software will do the security updates. And granted, we're talking about feature updates, but I also think that you have to do the feature updates by a certain point, because then there's going to be other security updates behind that are going to be important down the road. So that's one of the things you get. Yeah, you can't depend on. Again, we would love this wonderful world where you could throw a piece of software on your customer's computer and it just works and does everything for you. You're sitting on the beach, soaking up the sun, drinking your Mai Tai, and just life is great. Well, guess what? Whoever sold you that is full of it, because that will never happen. You always will have to be involved in some form or fashion.
There's no such thing as a passive IT support company.
It's usually reactive, but oh my gosh. So Jennifer, we're talking about cybersecurity. We're talking about, things that obviously we need to do. And obviously you have a program or, according to your website, a program on how to sell these cybersecurity things to your clients. And so kind of give us, I digress because we kind of went backwards. Give us a little background in yourself before we forget, and let us know where you came from and how you got to where you're at now.
Sure. So I owned a MSP in the Washington, D.C. area with my husband. He continues to run it today without me. And I did all of the marketing and the sales and grew that to a certain point. And then I was recruited away to a marketing company who saw what I was doing, saw that I could implement, and said, listen, we need someone to come in and coach MSPs on sales and marketing best practices. So I shifted more into a coaching role. And then after a couple of years, I was approached by a brand new startup cybersecurity company, and that's how I made that shift from managed services over to cybersecurity. They were a SaaS company, brand new. I think I was employee number 3 or 4, and I was brought in to sell their product and their service to the channel. And we went from brand new baby startup to acquisition by Continuum Managed Services it was less than 2 years. I think it was 18 months, something. It was quick. It was a lot of fun. And so that's really where I shifted from managed to cybersecurity. So that's a little bit of my background. So.
Oh, awesome. That's a great beginning story there. So now, what types of services do you offer, and basically what is your company about? What does it do as far as cybersecurity and teaching people how to sell?
Yeah, so what's interesting is because of the roots that I've got inside of the channel, I've had the opportunity to talk to hundreds of MSPs that have either tried to make the transition to being security focused or successfully made that transition. And the ones that haven't been successful, or the ones that are just starting out, really there's a lot of jumbled, the terms. What's the package look like? How do I price this? Rick, you were saying, if there's a cost involved, do I pass that along to the client? Just a million different things to figure out. And many people have said it's like staring up the side of a mountain. There's this mountain face, and I know I want to get to the top. I don't want to plant my flag and make myself a cybersecurity expert, but I don't know how to get from here to there. And what I want to let the channel know is that I've actually, in the back of the mountain, I've carved a path. I know exactly the 6 steps you need to take to get from the bottom of the mountain to the top. I want to help you get there. And so that's what my company is all about, helping you get up that mountain step by step, because almost every company gets stuck in at least 2 of those steps. And I can't predict which step you'll get stuck on, but I can guarantee you'll get stuck on 2. And so I have systems in place and frameworks in place and implementation plans to help you get from what I call cybersecurity 0 to cybersecurity hero as quickly as possible.
That's great. That is a great synopsis of what you do. So before we continue on, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come right back into this exciting conversation. Our show today is brought to you by BusyBench. Remember when running your business was simple? BusyBench sure does. I wish I knew when that was. Wouldn't it be nice to quickly create a repair ticket, generate an invoice with a single click, and manage thousands of customers completely free of charge? Absolutely. BusyBench thinks you will enjoy adding an unlimited number of customers, invoices, estimates, and inventory items so much you might forget we have paid features too. But don't worry, when your business grows, you need things like SLA alerts, payment processing, and recurring subscriptions. BusyBench will be with you every step of the way. Turn a ticket into an invoice with a single click. If you added inventory items to a ticket, they will be added to the invoice as well. New invoicing module allows you to track when a customer opens an invoice and determines when it was viewed. That's always very helpful. Hey, did you get my invoice? What invoice? Yeah, the one you opened 5 times. Yeah, that one. Yeah, pay it, please. Additionally, customers can pay that same invoice online, which is super convenient for them. Manage your assets with predefined metrics and customization options. Easily track everything from customer serial numbers to logon passwords and device details from a single location. Receive daily digests recapping all of your activities, such as tickets created, invoices generated, and payments received. Go to busybench.com and start your free account today. When you decide to upgrade, use the offer code PODNUTS for 30% off the life of your account. I want to thank BusyBench for supporting this episode of the Computer Repair Podcast. All right, so getting back into our conversation, talking about, getting people from point A to point B. And I guess there's a lot of things out there in the industry that when we talk about cybersecurity and we talk about, there's, and Jennifer, I know, I apologize. You're going to learn a few things about me today. Some you may like, some you may not. That's okay. We'll still be friends. Things like MSP, I've always kind of poo-pooed. It's kind of a stupid term, in my opinion. We do managed services, which makes a whole lot of sense. Being a managed service provider means that I could be, the guy that brings out your cow manure every week to the farm and puts it out there. They do managed services too. So would they be managed service provider? I don't know. But, so anyways, these are just the simple things that go through my simplistic little head that, make sense to me. But when we think about things like managed services and the things that we need to be doing, now you've got this new terminology where I'm going to transition. First, it was I'm going to transition from break fix to MSP, which again, we kind of said, okay. But when somebody calls you for a password reset, you're still stopping and they're broken and you're fixing it. So whatever, it's semantics. But when you think about the cybersecurity portion of it, now people want to go from an MSP to an MSSP. Double stupid, number one. Who comes up with this stuff? But when I think about I'm going to be a managed services, security, whatever, it doesn't matter. The reality is it goes back to what I said originally, and that is we really should be doing this stuff for our customers, whether they want it or not. But I think what most of us have a problem with is how do we get that message across to them so that they have the realization that they actually need it without us going, please, please, would you open up the purse strings and just let us do this over time so that we can have you in the safest environment we can possibly have you in so that we're going to mitigate most of the things that might happen to you. So Jennifer, from your standpoint, how does that make you feel? No, I'm just kidding.
I have lots of opinions. So without mentioning any names, there is a vendor out there that is wanting you to partake in their software option. We'll just say that, and their marketing pitch is basically you get this magic S, right? We're going to take you from MSP to MSSP, and all you have to do is I think they even say demo my software. Oh, awesome. All I have to do is demo it. Sweet. I don't even have to deploy it. That's the easiest S I've ever earned. And I do think that's making things very, very simplistic, because I've mentioned this a couple of times, but there's a very different mindset shift. We need to think about, we talked about password policies and making them expire, making them complex, making sure employees understand why we're doing the password policy, making sure we are sharing responsibility with clients. All of that it's really a cultural change in how most of us have done business up until now. And so yes, we should have been doing these things all along, but the reality is most of us haven't. Most of us have not pushed out 2FA to our clients and our team. Most of us sometimes let things slip through the cracks with our own backups. We don't test our backups. So, I mean, there's a lot that needs to change because of the threats that we're against. But I don't want to chase that too far, because you said, how do we share the message with our clients? And I think one thing that's great is that the media today is sharing a lot of security stories. Now, the challenge is the stories they typically are telling is corporate America. It's the big corporations across the globe. So we need to find a way to share those stories and explain what those stories have to do with the small business. So I actually saw Terry Cole did this on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. He did a really good job of saying, hey, I just saw this article, and it was about the Delta Airlines CEO and what keeps him up at night when it comes to security. And he said, I know, Mr. Small Business Owner, you're thinking, what does the Delta Airlines CEO concerns about security have to do with you? Well, as we dig into this article, we can see that he's concerned about machines being unpatched and antivirus not being installed and employees disabling antivirus. And hey, look, those same things that the Delta CEO is concerned about, that's the reason you should hire me, or clients, that's the reason you're paying me. And so you've got to translate this ready-made, well, I guess I should say almost ready-made marketing, and translate that into words that your clients care about, because they don't think, okay, Target was breached, therefore I could be breached. You have to explain, well, Target was breached because of a third-party software. Target did everything right, but the third-party software people screwed up. Do you use any third-party software? I don't know. What's third-party software? Well, let's have a conversation. And now you're adding value to your clients and making them understand that you are security focused. Up until now, we've been very, very quiet about security. So our clients don't even worry about it. It's not something that's in their mind. So we have to wake up that part of their brain and let them know that this is a threat. And if that means we need to charge them more because we're putting employee training in place or because we're putting in a new stack, then that may be what it means. It probably is what it means.
Rick, let me ask you. So when you think about security, what keeps you up at night?
That I don't get that phone call. No. You know, I'm not Delta, so I'm okay. But no, it's I was just thinking about it, and there's two ways really. And I'm gonna not answer your question, but there are two ways that normally we're gonna get clients to really buy into this. One is you're gonna have to. I hate to say it this way, but you're gonna have to scare them. You're gonna have to show them, anecdotal evidence of things happening. For every target that gets breached, there's 10 small guys like you that got hit. They're just not in the news. You know what I mean? They're just not in the news. They're just, Target may lose 30 million. If you lose $1 million, you're out of business. So that's one way we just have to do it. And now what I'm starting to do, any new client I take on, all of this stuff is just included. I got some basically some good advice from another MSP. Don't kill a term, but who said, if you're gonna do this, you do it right, and you offer the client the whole stack. You offer them everything, and it's not a matter of trying to, I want to get this guy to save money. But if you cutting corners, you're gonna end up killing yourself later, or killing him, or killing your business. So now it's all coming as one package from me. So when you hire me, you're going to get RMM software, but you're also going to get a firewall. You're also going to, all the things that come along with it, that come along with my stack. You're going to have to employ complex passwords. You're going to have to do two-factor authentication on certain things. It just has to happen. And that's the way we do it. And if you don't want to do it that way, then, there's 10 other guys in my zip code that have the same title as I do that can offer to you differently. But I just don't want to be responsible for the other side of it, because in the end, those things do keep you up. When you don't do it right and it's not right, that keeps you up at night.
Well, and what do they say too? Security versus convenience is really what we're fighting. And so I think sometimes we might go over on the other side a little bit too much, where we go, we're going to have to lock everything. Well, if we really locked everything down, maybe most workers wouldn't work for that company anymore, because if we had it our way, there's all kinds of justifications for why somebody needs to be on Facebook, etc. And so these things, or have my Spotify account so I can listen to my music during the day, so there's legitimate things. And I think we really need to figure out what it is that's going to protect not only the company, their software, their files, different things that we need to do. Knowing the email can be compromised, that needs to have 2FA. I mean, you really have to have that dual authentication, and you got to figure out a way to do it. There's many different ways to do it, and sometimes it's hard getting the client to kind of figure out, okay, I know I need to do this. I don't want to do it because it's inconvenient. And so, Jennifer, what do you say to that when they go, hey, it's too inconvenient for me to do this? Stop stifling me, man. I just want to do art, man. Okay. Anyways.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Well, first of all, Rick just taught me that I don't have to answer your questions. So this is like.
Oh, that's normal. Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't tell me that. No, but you make a valid point, because up until now, really what we've been selling with our managed offering is uptime and convenience, and things working quickly. And then when we institute something like, hey, I'm going to force you to reset your password, that's not convenient. It's not fast. 2FA. Completely inconvenient. It's pain in the rear. And so yes, when your clients say, hey, you didn't make me do this last month, last year, why are you making me do it now? It's really what Rick just said. You're saying, well, you know what? Last year, we didn't have these crazy things we needed to worry about. Last year, or maybe 3 years ago, we didn't have our government secrets that somehow mysteriously got leaked to the dark web. And now everybody and their brother can take those secrets and twist them and use them to get inside of your network. So what I'm doing is keeping up with that. You pay me, whether you use the term, VCIO or trusted advisor or whatever, however you say it, you pay me every month to make sure that you are keeping up with the times. And I'm telling you, you're not. That's why we're putting these things in place. Well, what that does is it differentiates you from the other 10 or 12 IT companies that you could probably throw a rock at and hit, because you're approaching things in a very different way.
That's very good. And that's something that we need to think about moving forward for sure. It's one of those things where it sucks to have to do certain things in your business, but when it makes sense, it's kind of easier to do the hard stuff now so that down the road, the catastrophic stuff that can happen doesn't happen to your client base, and makes it better for you. So that's definitely something that we need to concern ourselves with. So as far as, obviously you said there's and I can't remember how many steps, but you have X amount of steps to move a client through. What are some of the high level things that we can touch on just to talk about what else can we say to our clients to get them to come on board without having this? No, I don't want to.
So one of the biggest things is simply to have a conversation with them and say, I am concerned about the security of your data. And that's what you're paying me for, is to keep your data secure. And while we have a backup, and it's on site and off site, and maybe you have an air gapped backup, we have to make sure that, okay, that's great, we can get your data back if it's encrypted, but what if it goes off site? So there's a lot of things that you have to talk to your clients about and say, we need to have a conversation. So that's a big thing, is to initially have that conversation, and then, like Rick said, not using fear tactics, starting to create kind of a library of these stories, and just talking to your clients about those stories, maybe doing a quick Facebook Live if that's what you do, or LinkedIn Live, saying, okay, Delta guy was scared, you should be scared too. Target was hacked, you could be hacked too. And so helping them understand, for some of your clients, it'll be an overnight switch. You say, I'm concerned, we need to put this new stack in place. They're going to say, yep, let's do it. For others, it may take 2, 3, 4 quarterly business reviews, assuming you're even doing quarterly business reviews, which is questionable probably for a lot of the listeners, but it could, for some people, it will be a process. It will be a 6-month, a 1-year process to get them to hear you over and over and over again, and finally say, okay, I'm finally willing to listen to you.
Well, if you find a good restaurant, what do you generally do? We generally go and tell somebody else about it. If we read a good review online on Yelp, which I still don't understand, but whatever, people go by that. But what do regular people do? They actually look at those and go, oh, this has got 4.5 stars. Or you look at a review on Amazon. Everybody's always checking, oh, let's see what the reviews are. Oh, it's 4.5 stars. I'm pretty safe if I buy that. And even if I don't, they have a 100% return policy, whatever. So we're constantly telling a good story of the things that we see online. And so I think to change our mindset from, we're going to scare the bejesus out of you. I don't even know what that word means. I just heard it one time, but we're going to scare you so badly. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to use scare tactics. I don't want to do that. But if you're sharing a story that could help them, no different than, hey, when you're walking to your car from the store in a parking lot that's unlit, have your keys out, keep your eyes up and moving around, pay attention to where you are, get to your car, unlock it, get in, lock the door, and start your car and take off. Because they've had problems in this parking lot before. So that's not a scare tactic to scare somebody. It's just to let them know, hey, be aware of what's going on around you and be diligent. That's the same thing that we need to give to our customers. How do we be diligent, or how they can be diligent in the things that we're sharing with them so that they're safe in a dark parking lot, etc.
And it's not unlike 6, 7 years ago, when BDRs really became accessible to us and to most of our clients. At first, there was a lot of, I don't want to scare my clients, I don't want to talk to them about fire, flood, and earthquake. And yet today, I would venture that probably 80% of the clients that are on some kind of a managed services deal have a BDR, have some type of a backup that's hopefully not a hard drive. Right? So the same concerns. A lot of it, some of it is legit, but a lot of it's just head trash. So I don't want to scare them. Well, how did you sell a BDR? You talked about restore point objective. You talked about data loss. How much data can you lose? How much downtime could you have before it impacted your business? Same exact kind of conversations to sell security. So you can take the fear approach. You can take the logical, let's talk about downtime. But the reality is it probably needs to be more of the former, because people make decisions emotionally and then they justify them with the logical, okay, let's talk about how much data I can afford to lose. But they have to believe it can happen to them. You know, just kind of come full circle to when does someone buy a BDR? It's when they've had an issue. Well, we don't want them to buy security from us once they've had a security issue. We want to prevent them from getting to that point.
You know, I think one of the things that probably people should check out too is when a person says, "Oh, I can afford to lose a bunch of stuff." Well, what I want you to do is I want you to log in their email account and see how much of a digital hoarder they are, because you'll see that they believe all those digital files, all those digital emails are very, very important to them. And so you can have that conversation. But Rick, when you think about taking cybersecurity to your client base, and what are some of the things that you're hearing out there right now when you bring these things up? Hey, we need to put this in place. What are the customers saying?
Well, it all rolls down to finance, to the cost. They always, it's to your blue in the face, you can explain all of the positives and all the negatives, but to them, they're waiting for that bottom line. What is this going to cost me? So that's usually the biggest, it's usually the biggest hurdle to overcome. Then sometimes you actually have customers who don't believe that, someone's like, you're just you're trying to make money. If you think I'm trying to make money, you should work with someone else. You know what I mean? But, it's not necessarily, it's what I'm trying to do. And I'll just say it straight. I'm here to protect you, but I'm also here to protect me, because if something goes wrong, you're going to be looking to me to fix it or to blame me for it. Right? I'm not doing my job if I don't make you aware of what could happen, and I don't do everything I can to put you where you should be. So, the biggest objective is always the cash outlay for it. Second is going to be the actual need. Do they actually need it? So, again, new clients, they don't necessarily get much of a choice. We're selling the packages now with all of it included. Now, if you have a firewall in place, I'm not going to say you got to rip that out and put mine in. But we're going to make sure that firewall is up to date, that, you have the proper subscription for it, things like that. But it's just that approach that I have to take now. We all have to take now, because there are too many things that I know personally I let slip through the cracks. And then I've been lucky, more so than anything. I can say it's been more luck than skill that nothing has happened. So now I have to, I've made the decision a little while back now to make sure I button down all the hatches and do all that I can so that I can sleep at night.
Very well said. All right, let's take another quick break, and then we'll continue on with the conversation. Our show today is brought to you by Untangle Next Generation Firewall, designed to provide your small to medium business customers with the easiest, most cost-effective solution for network security. Speaking about security, Untangle is the fastest way to add cybersecurity to your service offerings. We've taken enterprise-grade security and put it into a platform that makes it easy to get started risk-free. There's no steep learning curve with Untangle. That's good. I need simple. Instead, you'll get a browser-based dashboard that lets you see the status of your managed networks at a glance. You'll enjoy on-the-box reporting included at no extra cost. Plus customizable alerts that integrate easily with apps like PagerDuty and VictorOps. Make it simple to stay on top of any incidents that do occur. Get to them quick and fast and take care of them. Untangle NG Firewall not only protects your clients with gateway antivirus, spam blocking, and intrusion prevention, but also gives you control over traffic at the application level with web content filtering, app control, and full SSL inspection. You also get WAN optimization features like balancing, failover, and bandwidth control. Whether you need a VPN options or a captive portal for secure Wi-Fi, Untangle NG Firewall has everything you want in a single solution. With lots of freebies like centralized management with zero-touch provisioning and a cloud threat intelligence scan for a second layer of defense included at no extra cost. There's no better choice than Untangle for getting visibility into and control over network traffic. Helping your clients safely connect to the internet, to their business-related critical applications. Visit untangle.com/podnuts today to get a free no obligation trial of NG Firewall and save 15% on any purchase with promo code podnuts. We want to thank Untangle Firewall for sponsoring this episode of the Computer Repair Podcast. All right, so getting back into, obviously we're talking about how do we sell this stuff? What are the steps we need to take? So Jennifer, what things are we missing thus far that we need to think about when we're talking about taking the cybersecurity message to our clients?
You know, we've touched on quite a bit of it. I think the biggest thing we have not talked about is especially with our new clients, it is a new budget line item. We've always bundled everything together, and we've kind of killed ourselves because we've used this term all you can eat. Whether we've used the term with our clients or we just think it in our head, we say, okay, I'm, all in seat price, however we want to say it. It's whatever the dollar is, and that's supposed to cover everything. Well, now we're putting in extra things because there are new threats out there and craziness. And do I charge them? Do I not charge them? And because I'm in business to make money, that's what business is about. Unless it's a 50 cents an endpoint or maybe $1 an endpoint solution, you're probably going to have to charge the client more money. And so you have to have that conversation about how this is new. Yesterday, we just rolled security in because we could do some pretty basic stuff and keep you safe. Today, that's not the case. So having that conversation that it is a new budget line item, sometimes that can be very effective. And I love the approach. I've heard it from a lot of different companies. Listen, all of my new clients coming in, I'm requiring them to have this package. And so perhaps for your clients, you say, I'll give you a 6-month grace period to find the money, and we'll roll it in gradually. Maybe you push it out to the servers first, then the workstations, maybe vice versa from a security standpoint. But if you start to explain, I understand this is something you've never budgeted for, but this is new protection because the threats are real, and all my new clients coming in have this package. That starts to bridge that gap. And by not requiring them to make a decision today, but giving them a deadline, there's some breathing room there.
You know what I've always found weird was that if you look at most companies, the way that they run their businesses, they know they have known bills that go out every single month, every single week, whatever it is, however they pay their bills. And one of the things that for whatever reason is never budgeted before or for, and I believe this is our fault, to be honest with you, because we have not forced their hand to go, you need to budget money aside for your IT infrastructure, meaning, if we need to replace workstations every 5 years, now people are, we can get a couple more years out of them, throw an SSD in, this, that, the other. And I'm like, yeah, you can. I guess if I don't know I'm running on a piece of junk, I guess it doesn't bother me that bad. But again, from a standpoint of if I replace my desktop computer every 3 years and I see a phenomenal difference every time, I can't imagine. I still go back to the stories of having customers who will wake up, turn their computer on, go make a pot of coffee, get the cup of coffee, bring it down, and Windows is just starting to come up. Now, this was years ago, and I get it's not that bad anymore. But anyways, but having that IT infrastructure so that they have the funds put aside. And the other thing too is I think a lot of companies do not do a regular annual raising of the rates, whatever that might be. So if you're going to do an all you can eat, you need to do things like, if you're going to just roll that stuff in, that's fine. Just understand that the next year, hey, I'm going up another 10%, or I'm going up another 15%, whatever it is. And just the customer should understand. It's like the person that goes, well, wait a minute, I'm selling widgets at the company here. That's what we make. We make widgets, and their costs are going up every year. They're selling them for more every year. And then we feel bad because we're raising our costs, but giving them more. Now, if you're not, and you're kind of staying where you're at, that's a different thing. But most of us, if you're trying to improve that business and you want to have that all-inclusive, all you can eat type menu, then you've got to somehow raise your rates and you've got to count the cost. Everything that you put in, you have to figure out where's the pain points for you. If you're putting in a firewall and and you have to whitelist a bunch of things on that firewall. That takes time and effort. And, maybe you'll get a good list to start with, but there are things that, we need to get to. Oh, takes time to get in there and do all that stuff. So we've got to think about those things when you're doing your business. And I think that's what a lot of people go, well, I charge X dollars per hour, X dollars per, workstation, yada, yada, and that's going to cover it. But they really don't ever count the total cost of what it costs to run the business. And I don't think you should feel bad for raising your rates and doing that stuff. Again, if you're doing it right and you want to really take care of the customer, then do it right and take care of the customer. Just know that it's going to cost a little bit more, and that's okay.
I think it's especially important in the security world to allow yourself that option to give a 10% bump or a 5% bump or whatever that increase is going to be every year, simply because we don't know what's coming around the corner. 4 years ago, ransomware wasn't really a thing. We probably can remember the first time we heard, what do you mean your machine has a countdown timer and it says to give you Bitcoins? Like, that was unheard of. But today, ransomware is everywhere. Well, what's coming out tomorrow? What's coming out in January that we're going to have to find because it's, again, security is all about being reactionary. So what are the bad guys planning to release in January that in February, yet another vendor is going to come into the channel and say, I've got this great solution. And maybe it is a great solution. And maybe it's only $1 per endpoint. At some point, you can't eat that difference. You've got to charge your client for it. So the most savvy IT support providers are saying, here's my security package, here's how much it is, and I have the right to increase it by 10% every year simply because I don't know what threats are around the corner. And I think that's a great way to stay ahead of the competition, or at least give yourself the ability to stay ahead of the competition. Again, kind of what you said, Jeff. Don't charge them more just because you can. But if your costs are going up, if you have to add additional layers in, you've got to have the ability to charge for that.
Rick, when you tell your customers you're going to raise your rates, which I'm of the firm belief you don't tell them, you just do it. That's just me. Are you getting any pushback on that, or what? I mean, what are the customers saying, or how do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's chaos all the time. and I'll be honest, my hourly rate I've raised twice now in the last 3 years. So my MSP rate, I've made the decision this year that I'm going to go up going into 2020. I did not, and I could be scolded for this, but I did not raise it for 2019. So I've started to have that conversation with clients. One of the things I'm trying to do is all of the things. And when I go in and I know a machine's 5 years old, I'm saying, we're going to have to start thinking about replacing this machine. It's going to cost you this. And then I put that on paper in an estimate. So when it's time, or when I say, okay, we have to replace this machine, it's not necessarily a shock that it's all of a sudden it happened. I've told you 3 months ago, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, we're going to have to make some changes to this or that. But yeah, the clients, we don't like to pay rate increase either. So if our MSP or if our, whoever provides our services to us tells us they're going to go up, we have a little bit of a fit too. But, it just has to be done. And it's not always a pleasant conversation. Sometimes I'll sell it backwards and say, hey, we have to, we're going to have to go up, and you're still cheaper than you would be if you were at XYZ or ABC. But it's going to happen. The letters are going to go out in September, telling everyone that we're going up. Their prices are going to go up starting January. So those who want to, fight me on it, I'm sure I'll get emails and phone calls about it, and we'll have the conversation, and basically we'll have to explain why and what's going on, and that's.
I would almost, I don't know. To me, I would send out the invoices with the increase on there, maybe a little note at the bottom. And here's why we're increasing things, whatever, due to whatever things going up, as everything does. This is why we have to increase our rates at this point. And then what I'm going to gather and what I've heard out there most of the time is probably 95% of the people won't even bat an eye. They'll pay it. You'll get 5% of the same people that, maybe they'll bat an eye, and that's fine. but I don't know if I would give everybody the option to sit there and think about it, because if you're already taking care of them and you're already doing a good job, they're going to stick with most people. That, again, it's about relationships in this business, I believe. And if you don't have a good relationship with your client, and you're a client that's going to throw you under the bus or be a big pain in the behind, that's probably a client you shouldn't have anyways.
Right. I agree.
Chip them off to the side and give them to somebody else. Matter of fact, let me find an IT provider for you. I could do that.
As I always say, there are 10 in the zip code you can find. But I just, I just like the idea of giving everyone just notice, right? I don't anticipate I've had some clients since I've started this business that, when we've made increases or, they've not batted an eye about it. I've had some who've came along kicking and screaming, but at the same time, I know they're going to do it anyway.
Right.
So, but I just wanted to get it out, give anybody who, because again, I always say this to people. They say, how long is your contract? My contract is month to month. If you don't want to work with me, I don't want to work with you. It makes no sense for us to have a relationship for money if we don't want to, if one of us is not happy, just so everything I do is based on that relationship. So I try to give every client the best service I can. And if I'm screwing up something, they tell me about it. I try to make adjustments for it, because sometimes you overlook certain things, or, every customer doesn't need to be serviced the same way. One customer told me he sees me too much. Another says he doesn't see me enough. So I have to make those adjustments, right? As long as they feel they're getting their money's worth. And a lot of that, they don't see it in the systems, right? All they care about is if it's working, it's working. The moment it's down, they're calling me. And then it matters is how fast do I respond, right? Do I know what's going on? Even if I can't fix it immediately, if I make them aware of it, this is what's happening, I'll be there. We'll get to it, in X amount of time. The relationship is fine. So I'm going to raise the rates because I need to raise the rates because my rates are being raised and I'm not making enough money. But I don't anticipate too much pushback. I know some people will, but we'll deal with it.
Very well said. All right, Jennifer. So is there any other things that we have not touched on when it comes to selling cybersecurity or anything about your business offerings at this point?
I think the biggest thing is simply how to reach out to me. So my website is pretty simple, mspsalesrevolution.com. And one thing that I am putting into place, I expect to have it done in about 2 weeks. I am putting together a 30-day challenge. So it's literally free. 30 days to take you from cybersecurity zero to cybersecurity hero. We talked about a lot today, but some of it was in theory, right? In theory, create your stack. Well, in theory, figure out your pricing, go schedule quarterly business reviews. And so the 30-day challenge is going to take you through each thing step by step in a very methodical manner to get you to the point where you're starting to think like a security professional. So you can reach out to me on my website or my email. It's jennifer@mspsalesrevolution.com. I love the channel. That's why I'm doing what I do. So I'm happy to talk to any of your listeners.
Awesome. And I appreciate you really coming out today and sharing with us. And
Sure.
I've learned a ton about things that we need to work on in this in the industry and figure out what's the best message and the best way to get that information to our clients. So I would encourage people to reach out to Jennifer. And this is the first time we've met, and we've had a great show. She's almost seems one of the club already, getting in there with the jokes and everything. So it's been awesome. All right, Rick, if people want to find out more about you and where you've been for the last, I don't know how many months since you've been on the show, where would they do that?
I'm always around, but you can find me at Renactus.com is my website, rick@renactus.com. If you want to send me an email, I'm available in the secret face group. So I'm always lurking around somewhere, so you can always find me.
Rick, it was nice to have you back out again, and I enjoyed the conversation we've had, so it's been awesome. All right, come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnets.com/CRP Live. Join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room. You can also send an email to podnuts@podnuts.com or leave a voicemail at 734-335-1000. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on the Computer Repair Podcast.